Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the executive meeting on the 13th of February. To start item one, apologies for absence. I think we've got Chris Wilson, who hasn't made it tonight. Item two, leaders' announcements. Just to remind everyone, obviously, that we're being webcast, and so please speak into the microphone with the red button on. We've got a lot to get through tonight, so hopefully we can get finished before 10 o'clock. Right. Item three is the minutes of the 21st of December, pages 6 to 24 on the agenda. This is there's some restricted minutes in the supplementary agenda. So members, we have before us the minutes from the committee meeting on the 21st of December. Are you content for me as leader to sign the minutes? Can I have a proposer? Miley?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I so propose that we accept these minutes.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second? Oh, Joe, thank you very much. If anyone wants to amend the restricted minutes, the meeting will need to exclude the press and public to discuss them. So just to be clear on that. Should we have a vote on that? Are we having anyone for or against? For? If we want to, no, sorry, if we want to pass them as the and any against or abstaining? Okay. Right. Item 4, declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest today? No. Nope. Okay, we're moving to item 5, which is the budget 24-25 and medium-term financial plan, which is pages 25 to 91 of the agenda pack. And I'll hand over to Councillor Carl Britton, who will present the report.
Thank you, Leader. The reports provided set out the budget for 2024-25 and the medium-term financial plan and the capital programme. Also included are the savings proposals put to members of the executive, some of which the executive recommended be put forward for member decision, others which were not recommended to be pursued further at this time. The document provided in enclosure 1 is the latest version of the medium-term financial plan, updated just prior to publication. It is not expected that these figures are now going to change going forward. Since the Audit and Governance Committee met on 30th of January, the picture for 24-25 has improved slightly, largely through the receipt of additional government funding announced recently. As a result of this, an additional £200,000 has been added to the contributions to the reserves. East Herts has very low levels of reserves compared to most local authorities, and in the light of the current deficit position regarding 23-24 spending and risks associated with delivering the future savings programme, there is a need to increase the reserves this year while the opportunity is there. Since last year, we have slightly changed the format of this report. In previous years, the required savings were shown under a heading of transforming East Herts savings between the cost of services and corporate budgets. To the casual reader, it may not have been wholly clear that these were targets and not identified savings. The current format removes this section completely and shows the net budget position for each year at the bottom of the report. This hopefully gives a clearer picture of the true position going forward. The Transforming East Herts programme is continuing, with the savings shown under the heading Savings Implemented under Existing Delegations. Considering the net cost of services on page 39, you will note the inclusion of the net income from Hertford Theatre as a new category. Also note that the figure of £4,739,000 on the capital expenditure charged to a revenue account includes the £3 million for Hertford Theatre agreed in 2023. Aside from this, most of the service cost increases reflect general inflation. In corporate budgets, we begin to see the effect of borrowing on the minimum revenue provision and interest payable on loans. The cost of servicing debt has risen almost 2.5 million in comparison to the budget of 12 months ago, and is only marginally offset by an increase in investment income. The effect of interest rate changes is now going to have a major influence on the financial position of the council. Beneath corporate budgets, the effect of the savings programme are shown. A total of almost £1.2 million of savings have been incorporated into the budget for this year. If we exclude the capital expenditure charge to a revenue account already mentioned, the savings effects almost entirely cancel the effects of inflation, leaving the cost of services at a very similar level to the budget of 23-24. This represents a great outcome for the residents of East Herts, and I thank officers for all their hard work in achieving this, although with the cautionary note that these savings still need to be delivered. The remaining increase in cost for 24-25 is therefore almost completely due to the cost of servicing debt. Moving on to funding, we've been very fortunate this year to receive an overall increase in funding from government. A particular note is the £1.5 million worth of new burdens funding for food waste collection, which it should be noted will be a one-off payment and is to cover the bulk of the cost of new containers, which are itemised in the capital budget. The New Homes Bonus grant has also increased significantly this year. The other various grants in total show an increase of 7.2% in total. In summary, the extra money from government for this year should be adequate to cover the increase in debt servicing costs and enable us to set a balanced budget comfortably for 24-25. As we look forward beyond 24-25, however, the financial position deteriorates. The new refuse contract to begin in 25-26 could cost considerably more than the existing contract. The cost of servicing debt rises by about another million to 4.9 million in 25-26. The one-off new burdens grant will not recur, and the New Homes Bonus is assumed to be at a much lower level than 24-25. These items alone will create pressures of over £5 million to the council budget compared to 24-25. On the positive side, we should hopefully see the benefit of income from Hertford Theatre. The inclusion of these figures has improved the net budget position going forward, though it must be noted that there is a great uncertainty in the projections at this stage. The magnitude of this change has been recognised, and steps are already taken to address the projected shortfall. The future capital programme in Enclosure 2 has been scaled back considerably to reduce the need to borrow. More savings will need to be made both under existing delegations and through the member options shown in Enclosure 3. Even with a proposed total of £4.1 million worth of savings, the net budget position in 25-26 is still over 1.4 million in deficit. Without those savings, we would have been looking at a shortfall of over 5.5 million. We do know that over time there will be changes to this figure. Will a new government make any attempt to tackle the crisis in local government funding? Will the 4.1 million of savings proposed be achievable in the next 2 years? What will happen to interest rates or gilt rates, up or down? We cannot know for certain the answer to any of these questions or many others. We do know, though, that based on current estimates, that 25-26 is likely to be very difficult. Hence the aim to increase reserves this year if we can, to provide a little bit more breathing space next year. In the light of the ongoing pressures we are under, it is recommended that we increase council tax by 2.99%. Members and the public may wonder how the council has arrived at this very difficult position. Sometimes a year-on-year comparison does not convey the bigger picture. So I did a comparison of budgets from 2020 and 2021 and the forecast for 25-26 to see how East Herts Council finances have evolved over the 5-year period. From an income perspective, the forecast cash received from government in 25-26 is currently forecast to be the same as it was in 2020-21. Yet over the period in question, we have seen inflation of 21% already, with still another year to go. This real terms reduction is causing council problems across the country, with surveys suggesting as many as 1 in 5 are looking at bankruptcy within the next 12 months. In terms of council tax receipts, we have seen receipts of 10.7 million in 2021 rise to a forecast of 13.1 million in 25-26. This is a 22% rise, made of a below inflation rise per household of 15.5% and a 6% increase in the council tax base. In total, our income has risen by 2.4 million over the 5-year period. Total expenditure in 2021 was 16.3 million, and this is forecast to rise to 20.6 million in 25-26, a rise of 4.3 million. The primary cause of this is the cost of finance. Totaling the net cost of servicing debt and investment income, there has been an increase of 4.6 million between the budgets of 2021 and 25-26. Taking away the finance component, general costs of council operations are forecast to reduce over this period. Given inflation of over 20%, this is quite a remarkable achievement. It should be noted firstly that many of the forecast savings still need to be realised in practice, and secondly that income from some of the investments made will act as an offset to the cost of services. In summary, where we are now is the position that we need as a priority to bring our income and expenditure back into balance over the next 2 years. I do not believe the council should have any problem balancing a budget this year, but 25-26 onwards remains a concern. Achieving the identified savings targets is a high priority over the next year, as well as finding new ways to reduce expenditure or increase income. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Carl. Are you proposing the paper?
Yes, I propose to pay.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Oh, Tim, thank you. Right, questions, comments, thoughts? Anything? Oh, Graham.
Having sat through a budget today at county for 1.1 billion, it's not too dissimilar. Sort of, there are lots of difficult decisions to be made. You mentioned in your opening remarks 1.5 million pounds for containers. If I can just correct you, it's 1.5 million pounds for vehicles and containers, vehicles to collect the food waste collection. Yeah. One or two points. Planning enforcement. I do separate statutory from non-statutory, but I feel that planning enforcement, being non-statutory, plays a vital role in the big developments that we're actually experiencing in East Hearts more than any other district borough throughout the county. I feel that this is an area where we should be seen to be continuing, moving forward, rather than sort of cutting back. Because I think we all understand the problems of development, what actually happens in new development, and you yourselves have introduced community meetings with residents, developers, etc. But that's only one part of the story. We need enforcement there to encourage, maybe rather than sort of penalise the developers. That's one area we'd look at. On Blue Badge, I wonder if you could sort of expand on Blue Badge. Is that sort of just on street parking, the Blue Badge, or is it in car parks? And you're going to be introducing car parking charges for the same as every other motorist?
So I think just to explain here, I think what you're looking at there is that you're looking at the ideas that we rejected. So we looked at obviously a set of ideas, and there's two enclosures. Enclosure 3 is the ones we accepted. Enclosure 4 is the ones we rejected. I think they're on enclosure 4, and we decided we weren't going to pursue reductions in planning enforcement, and we weren't going to pursue trying to make savings on Blue Badge. So yeah.
So is that the same for Economic Development Officer?
I believe it is, yes. 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 So all these on enclosure 4 were the ones that were put forward to us as ideas to consider, but we decided not to pursue them at this time.
And Visit Hearts?
Visit Hearts is on enclosure 3, I believe, isn't it? We did.
It's mid-year, yeah.
And yeah, so we have put that in the list of savings proposals.
Right, okay. They could play a good role. Civil enforcement parking, it's mentioned cumulative deficit of £4 million. And I think you want to make 250, recoup that cost and get an extra 250k per annum. Just wondering if you could sort of expand on that one.
So I think the civil parking enforcement is it's the idea basically to the council to try and gain more revenue from parking. I think there's a deficit that's been built up over time, which we can claw back. I think this only applies to on-street parking, so it doesn't apply to off-street parking. So it will take some time to claw that deficit back, and we're entitled to do that.
Yeah, because I understand that it's not far short of that figure per annum, the income in for parking to East South with civil enforcement, etc. And to start to claw that back, that must be a considerable hike in the car parking charges. And I think you mentioned a different regime in car parking charges to prevent congestion and introduce clean air. Will heavy polluting vehicles be penalised more than zero emission vehicles, and will they get a cheaper parking rate? Because what you're doing is you're discouraging certain types of vehicles to have clean vehicles.
So
Do you want to bring Tim in on this? Or?
well, yeah, I mean, basically that the parking policy is being reviewed over the next 12 months, and that's an area that Tim's looking at. So we haven't got the detail on that at the moment. That's something that's in the process.
But yeah, in principle, the polluter should pay. Yes, so that'll be part of a public consultation overhauling the whole parking policy throughout this next 12 months.
Right. So could I mention that if you increase the car parking charges considerably, that you would have vehicles move away from district council car parks and go into the Network Rail car park in Bishop Stortford, which charges £1 per hour, £2 for 2 hours, £3 for 3 hours. So one way you could be disincentivizing vehicles, but in another way you could be losing revenue by another multi-storey car park that got ample room for parking, a bit like Northgate End. You may lose sort of revenue. So it's understanding how you could do this.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay, David?
On page 60, there's a list of the proposed list of asset disposals, which, as you know, we discussed at the asset reference group, I think it was called, last month. Is there an update on that?
Well, the update is that I have fed back to the Chief Finance Officer for our discussions. And I think that, yes, the understanding is that it's unlikely that Tesco car park is going to be sold, but I think it's all these are still ongoing. So I don't think there's a specific update other than Tesco.
You've specifically called out Tesco there. Does that apply to the Waitrose?
So the Waitrose is being looked at in context of the ORL project. So that there have been discussions with Waitrose about the car park there, but because that's it within ORL, I haven't particularly mentioned it here.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. The recommendations for this paper are in A to D for this item. They're on pages 26 to 27 of the agenda pack. I presumably, can I take them on block? Okay, A to D. Can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you're in favour, please? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 6, capital strategy, minimum revenue provision policy and treasury management strategy 24-25, which is on pages 92 to 133 of the agenda pack. And again, it's back to you, Carl.
Thank you. This report outlines the capital strategy, the MRP policy and the treasury management strategy. In terms of the capital strategy and enclosure 1, the financial position of the council is that due to the costs of servicing existing and planned debt, the council is no longer able to afford any new major capital projects. Hence the need to pause the ORL development until such time as borrowing is reduced. In addition, capital assets are in the process of being reviewed and we'll explore ways to sell assets that could be sold to reduce the overall level of debt. A cross-party asset member reference group has been set up to further consider these options. The initial meeting concluded this would only be where the interests of the community are fully protected and where there is a clear financial advantage to the council in doing so. We are not planning to sell children's playgrounds to developers, for example, or assets which generate an adequate income and will continue to do so. We would consider transferring assets to town and parish council where the community ownership is protected. Enclosure 2 details the annual minimum revenue provision statement for 24-25. The council needs to approve this each year. The document details how minimum revenue provision is calculated with the aim of ensuring that capital expenditure is financed over a period broadly commensurate with that over which the capital expenditure provides benefits. The £6 million of asset sales plan will be applied as voluntary receipts, which will enable MRP to be reduced in subsequent years. The final report in enclosure 3 is the Treasury Management Report. The Treasury Management function is to ensure the Council maintains adequate cash flow for both its general operations and capital investments. This report meets the requirements of both the CIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management and the CIPFA Prudential Code for Capital Finance in local authorities. The capital strategy, minimum revenue provision policy and treasury management strategy was scrutinised by Audit and Governance Committee at its meeting on the 30th of January 2024. I'll just alert members that there's an error at the end of this report where it refers to Councillor Jeffrey Williamson as the contact. And he'll be pleased to hear that that actually is going to be corrected in time before council.
I'm very happy to take the credit.
I'd like to propose this report.
Thank you, Carl. Can I have a seconder, please? Vicky, thank you very much. Right. Questions, comments, thoughts from anyone? Anyone have any thoughts, questions? Yvonne.
Just one aspect really. This in paragraph 2.4, it talks about pausing the Arts Centre at Old River Lane. This is described in terms of pausing the Arts Centre. I wonder if that could be considered by the executive in terms of pausing council-led development at Old River Lane, because as things progress, the council will hold on to some freehold land. There's no impediment to that at the moment. Talking about building an arts centre is sort of burdening that land, and it's just a thought that to keep it light, to keep options open. There's no, it could be talked about as development rather than an art centre.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other thoughts? No? Okay. Right. Okay. Well, so there's one recommendation, A, or although that's actually wrong in the note I've got, but I presume it's the recommendations are on page 92 of the agenda pack, aren't they? Can we have a show of hands to indicate whether we're in favour, please? Thank you very much. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. That's passed. Right. Item 7 is Harlow and Gilston Garden Town Infrastructure Delivery Plan Review, which is on pages 134 to 216 of the agenda pack. I'm presenting this. So really this paper is an update on the infrastructure delivery plan for Harlow and Gilston Garden Town that was originally prepared by Arup in 2019. And the purpose of the paper is to lay out what infrastructure is required, where that infrastructure is needed, and when it's needed. And all of that is to obviously achieve the targets that are set by the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town plan in the district plan, in terms of a number of houses, sustainable travel, employment, etc. It provides for the scale of infrastructure needed. It provides the phasing, the cost, priorities depending on stage, who is responsible, who pays. It identifies any funding gaps and how developer contributions are shared. So this original paper from Arup was prepared about 5 years ago. And so obviously the plan now needs updating in light of approvals of housing by this council at Gilston and the crossings, in light of new local plans being approved by Epping Forest and Harlow, in terms of the new master plan framework for Harlow, the award of the housing infrastructure grant, changes to developer contributions, and changing costs and needs generally. So the role of the document is to provide a packet of, it's an evidence base for master planning. So for pre-application discussions, for working with planners on planning applications, and really to help our planning officers have those frank discussions that they need to have when they need to have them in order to get the delivery of infrastructure at the right time and the right place. This document is always going to be a snapshot. So the plan is that it'll be updated every 2 to 3 years going forward to keep up with the changes to infrastructure need and things like costs. So, you know, I think it's important that we endorse it now. Clearly, infrastructure, delivery of infrastructure is a key part of achieving what we want to achieve at Harlow and Gilston. So it's a critical document to endorse, and I propose it. Can I have a seconder, please? Vicky, thank you very much. Questions, comments? John?
Thank you, Ben. I've had a conversation with Kevin earlier on today on various things, but I just would like to highlight that conversation to other people here as well. There's no mention in regards to the infrastructure to burial grounds, reference regarding schools, roads, etc. But where we end up is just as important in making a place. Knowing that you'll rest somewhere peacefully in a place that you've grown up and enjoyed is just as much a part of being in a place as moving into it and moving out again. The Gilston area currently has, I believe, about capacity for 28 burials at the moment. I spoke to the vicar this evening, and she assures me that it's about 28. We're going to put in the region of about 30,000 people here over the next 30 years or so, and I know medicine's good, but I don't think that's that good. And I just want to understand how this will be provisioned. I believe there is space available, there's land available that could be used for it, but at the end of the day, who's going to pay for that land? It's not just a field that you throw a body into, it's actually a burial ground that you're creating. So who's actually going to turn it into somewhere that somebody could be happy being buried? We have precedent for it. I was on the DMC last Wednesday, and for 50 houses in Bishop Stortford at Hazel End Road, there was an amount of £1,050 for burial grounds. I'm not seeing that provisioned anywhere, not mentioned in the HEGT IDP or in any 106s anywhere. And I'd just like to flag that I think it's something that's missing.
No, it's a very good point. I think perhaps I should hand over to Kevin for that one.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Dunlop, for raising that point with me earlier. So your introduction was completely accurate there, Councillor Crystal, in relation to the infrastructure that the IDP we're updating on, and you can entirely see over the period of 3 to 4 years, there's been a whole range of circumstances have changed, funding, costs, inflation, all those sort of things have changed. That mean we need to look at the IDP again now, and we will continue to need to look at the IDP in the future when other demands come through. And that's a very good example Councillor Dunlop's raising there about burials. At the moment, Gilston is a sparsely populated area with probably very few burials in any one year, hence the very limited number of plots available. That will surely change, absolutely, because of the new population. And when we have a greater evidence base around that, then we can look to secure the resources you need for burials, which is primarily land, to enable sites to be available. The Bishop Stortford example is a very good one in that certainly the background of Bishop Stortford is that there was particular need in Bishop Stortford. It was very constrained supply. The town council there, which I believe is in control of almost all the burial locations, did a lot of work to assess the sort of demand that would be placed on their site, and they were able to demonstrate to us the need that was required in the future, and hence, as the planning authority, we've been able to secure funding, and Councillor Dunlop referred to an example there. As Gilston goes forward, I'm sure we will start to get that sort of detail coming forward. What I would say to members is that there is very good reason to believe that there is a way of finding a solution if this does become a problem, because as part of the development at Gilston, the landowner there effectively is handing over very large areas of land to the stewardship organisation, whatever it is, in due course. We know that very large areas of land have been handed over. So if you like, there's free land. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of control over it, but effectively there's almost free land there. And that's obviously your greatest resource. And obviously that stewardship organisation is probably well placed to decide that some of that land is provided for this particular need. Most of it will probably be for public enjoyment, open spaces, sports and recreation, but I'm sure they will take a view that this is a need as well. So the infrastructure delivery plan is obviously looking at the very significant infrastructure that we know, very certain cost and evidence base. There would undoubtedly be others that come through. This will be one, and I'm sure there'll be others, but I'm sure they can be accommodated by future updates and reassessments of need. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I mean, and we're at a town council meeting, I think, last night, where we saw clear signs of a shift in the way that the burial patterns as well. So those things are changing quite rapidly too. So yeah, there's not.
Can I come back on that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I appreciate the lands there, and that's probably one of the most expensive parts of it all. But who will pay to turn it into a burial ground? Because if we leave it until after the 106 is signed, I imagine it's much harder to negotiate with the developer than prior to the 106 being signed.
Come back on that. Yes, there will be costs, undoubtedly. We don't have the ability now to, if you like, introduce further requirements into the Section 106. Members will be aware, of course, that the Development Management Committee endorsed the heads of terms at the committee meetings February, March last year, which didn't include provision for burials because, as I say, we don't have that evidence base at the moment on which to base a request for funding. There will be funding requirements. I do understand that, but they would be covered in the normal way through the delivery of burials across other sites across the district. In other words, those who request a burial, obviously there is a payment required as a result, and that payment is used to fund those maintenance and operation of those sites. There will be some costs of putting the land into good order, again through the stewardship requirements of the 106, the stewardship requirements. They do require land to be handed over in a way that's suitable for its use in the future. So, for example, sports pitches obviously have to be put into proper order as sports pitches before they can be handed over. If a need is identified at the early stage of stewardship requirements coming forward, and those responsible start to identify those locations, we can certainly make those requests that is put into whatever order is required, probably servicing by way of access and so on. that it's put into that order. So again, I think there's a good opportunity to explore that with the landowners. But otherwise, funding requirements probably be part of the stewardship arrangements of securing the maintenance of the land across the site.
Thank you. Eric. Oh, sorry. Who was first? Eric was first and then Bob.
Thank you. And yeah, I had a 2-minute conversation with Kevin earlier. 2 parts to this. First one is the time at which it takes, the phasing. The whole project is moving at a very slow pace. And we know that, for example, even though the river crossings had detailed planning approval, they were conditional on getting outline approval. And because the decision notice hasn't been issued because of discussions ongoing with Section 106, we know that places where people are really not actually doing anything really proactive in moving their forward contracts on. Most of the work is exploratory. The housing infrastructure grant you mentioned, Chairman, I think that was extended to 2027, but you know, time goes on. So I'm just wondering whether we really have assessed the risks around what might happen if we get very close to that. And the other thing is, again, John Dunlop knows this because he and I have been involved in email chains around education. And the phasing part of that is really, really important to the local communities. As far as county is concerned, the education team would want to ensure that provision for education is made on occupation as the homes are being occupied, so as not to rely on local schools, other schools in Harlow and in East Herts being available for places. So there are lots of considerations here, and I just wonder whether we're really assessing all of the risks around delivery of infrastructure as time goes on. Thank you, Chairman.
Question? Yeah, Kevin, another one for you.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, they're absolutely right. There are risks that we continue to assess as the scheme progresses. Timescales become hopefully more crystallised. We're continuing to work through the detail of the Section 106 agreement with the applicants. In relation to the HIG funding that was mentioned there, the 172 million input from the government through its housing investment grant that have indeed recognised the complex nature of the scheme and deadlines have been pushed back, and HCC as the party in agreement with Homes England for the funding have worked very proactively with Homes England to ensure that those risks continue to be assessed and mitigated where we can. And one particular approach they've taken is to ensure the funding can be spread across a range of projects, not just the transport infrastructure, but across a range of different projects, some of which might come earlier. In relation to the education provision, we know again our county council colleagues are very tuned into those needs that were just identified there about provision being made when it's required, as soon as occupations take place on the site, and we're very confident again that they're taking a very thorough assessment, and we know that's taking place, a thorough assessment of the education delivery through 106. So yes, continue to monitor and manage those risks, and they do as they present themselves.
Eric Mark too. I put my hand up just to come back on John Dunlop's comments, but given Eric's comment and Kevin's response, just to say there is concern about the slowness at which this overall project is moving. It's a huge project. That was a friend, obviously. But yes, okay. It's a huge project, so people understand that it's not all going to be finished tomorrow. But there is concern about the time it's taking. So if I might add to Eric's question, I think given that obviously this is the planning authority, at least for the East Herts bit, what steps is this council taking to ensure that it's moving forward as quickly as it can be? Then if I might just come back to John Dunlop's comments, I thought, if I might say, I thought you made a very good point. It did seem to me that part of your point is that there is no reference to the point you are making in the paperwork. And I think you would like to see some reference to it in the paperwork. So I would like an answer to that. And I've also just taken the opportunity to say that I don't know that Yvonne got an answer to her point, and I'm not sure that Graham got an answer to his question. I think answers to the questions would be quite useful. Thank you.
Like, what measures are we taking? I think I've been going back to your first point. I think about, we're trying to move, we've agreed the joint committee, we're moving forward to with the joint committee at Harlow and Gilston. I think beyond, do you want to provide some answer about the details?
I'm not sure that I
mean,
think that's an excellent
maybe-
step. So the joint committee very much is about risk mitigation again, and there's a range of risks about delivering the project speedily, as well as there are around delivering it slowly. So we do recognise, and Councillor Deering's point, we do recognise there are risks for slow delivery. Obviously, we want to be thorough and ensure that we do secure the right level of infrastructure. So we don't want to do anything that may result in a risk through doing things speedily as well. So I think we have the right measure of activity going on, and some significant steps like the joint committee will secure mitigation of risks. Just on the very detailed point that was referred to there again about the burials, at present we don't. So the IDP is very much about an evidence base. It's based on what we know about costs, what we know about delivery, when it should take place. So there's a very detailed evidence base behind this. Whilst I'm sure that absolutely right in that there will be thoughts around the provision of burials across the Gilston area in the future. At the moment, we simply don't have that evidence base to be able to definitively include something at this point. We wouldn't be able to justify a position. We wouldn't have a position at the moment. So I think the response is that it's something we keep under review, and it may well feature in a future revision to this. But at this stage, we just don't have the evidence base to be able to do so.
I welcome this IDP. I think it's, as you say, most important that the executive commits to it. We members have benefited from a briefing a few weeks ago from Kevin and others, so we understand. Just wanted to talk about two areas. One is development viability assessment, and the other is other sources of funding, Homes England and land value capture. So with viability assessment, the report has and the document has lots of references to viability. This was crept into the planning system by the Conservative government. Development viability doesn't really have a place in planning. It's crept in, and now it's crept into plan making level, and it's a threat. It's a threat to a document like this. I hope executive might think of approving this, but with the proviso that the IDP comes first. It is a constraint on developers. Developers work out their viability with this as a solid basis, and planning policy as a solid basis. We already know that right at the start, the outline permission in principle that's been granted has much less affordable housing than policy says, and it's not good enough to say that 40% isn't ideal. Basically, it misses policy by miles, and I believe it's a bit of a failing of the Garden Town board at this stage. And if it's social affordable housing as a kind of infrastructure, social infrastructure, the next thing will be that open spaces go, parts of the network disappear, community facilities get eaten away. If too much leeway is given to viability. So that's one serious concern, which I hope that threat can be held at bay. And the other side is the funding. We have a Harlow and Gilston Newtown body because the government set it up, and and set up in the way that it has been means that there's funding from Homes England, and that funding is essential for infrastructure, so that the pressure isn't entirely on the developers to make sure that everything's provided. And so that has to be asserted. And the other is land value capture. Again, the report has lots of references to land value capture, and it's one of the key principles, one of the key Garden Town principles. And it is, I don't know whether we've missed the boat. I think we probably have missed the boat because the land was bought by the developers some time ago, but that was the time that the value shouldn't have gone to the farmers and the landowners before. It should have been held ready for the development. And there is reference to this because it's part of the Garden Town body, but it talks about land value capture in terms of development land value being captured through the use of planning obligations. And that's not quite right, because planning obligations are a good time to capture the value of development, but the land value has to be captured early. But I do hope that executive will bear in mind that that is a really solid principle behind the new sounds. And if there's an opportunity, if all the opportunities haven't been lost, then that land value capture should be brought in as much as possible. So it's it's supporting this IDP, but with those provisos and being very solid in its defence.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. There are risks there that we have to try and push as hard as we can. I think part of the challenge is we don't have a time machine, and so we can't go back to do what we may feel now is something that perhaps shouldn't have gone the way it did. But that's where we are. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Kevin.
They're all sound principles, aren't they, that have been referred to there, and absolutely are the basis behind the whole delivery of development, the viability of it, the delivery of infrastructure. So absolutely sound basis. We do, however, have a system that we work within, and there is advice and guidance from the government around how viability assessments are carried out, how they're operated, some of which some of us may not feel are the best approach, but they are, if you like, the policy and the guidance. We work within those. Certainly your officer's view is that we have captured for Gilston the best compromise between government funding, viability and delivery at the site, and that was captured in your development management committee decisions of the early part of last year. So and absolutely the 106 agreement that we continue to work through the detail is holding true to those heads of terms. So that point about not letting things slip away, absolutely holding true to those. So yes, absolutely all good points that do that the IDP does support the delivery on the basis of those.
Thank you. Joe.
Thank you, Leader. I think Councillor Estrop mentioned a couple of times when she was speaking, asking the executive to bear this in mind, the executive to do this. This move with the executive was at the planning application for Village 7 just before, or just at the end of the last term of this council. And this executive member spoke, hopefully, very strongly, expressing disappointment about the viability assessment and the reduction in affordable housing. Because we have a population that is growing, we need to provide housing, and my position is that should be as affordable as possible. However, as an executive, we can bear that in mind, but I don't think that was an executive decision, and I'm not sure it would be going forward. But notwithstanding that happened. We are where we are, and therefore, when this is presented to us, we need to move things along, as other members have indicated, which is why I'm going to be voting for it. But that does not mean that I don't hold that same view that it's disappointing what's happened, and an opportunity to shine really brightly was missed, in my opinion, in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a compromise, ultimately. Yeah, Tim.
It's just one more thing to add to the priorities. I guess most of us have seen examples of developments that have promised and we've not delivered, or the outcome hasn't been what was promised. And I think one of the very challenging aspects of Gilston, in amongst everything else that's been discussed, is one of getting this 60% modal shift. And it's really, really important that we get the infrastructure for sustainable transport, active travel in before occupation. It's almost like Eric's point about schools, you need, because people's habits and behaviours will be formed at that stage. And there are examples, unfortunately, littered around East Hart where there are gaps still. The houses are fully occupied, the premises, the estates are built, and there are gaps in the infrastructure still. So it's again, it's one of those others that we need to watch for. So that if we want this modal shift, we have to build the infrastructure.
Yeah, get the buses in place. Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever
all of those other
requires.
parts. Yeah. No, any other comments, questions? No. Okay. So the recommendation for this item is on page 135 of the agenda pack. Can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you're in favour or against? In favour first. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right. The next item is item 8. Harlow and Gilston Garden Town Strategic Economic Framework, which is on pages 217 to page 291 of the agenda pack. So this is the sort of the kind of matching paper, if you like, to the infrastructure delivery plan. It's the strategic economic framework is a roadmap for economic growth over the next 20 years. It sits alongside the various economic development strategies in the partner authorities, and the aim is to provide provide that garden town vision of jobs and economic development, not just housing. So a sort of holistic approach. It's also coupling socioeconomic development with enhanced sustainability. So the sustainability and livability to create balanced communities. At the moment, Harlow has roughly the same number of people coming into it each day as leave to go and work elsewhere. And the feeling of the members of the Garden Town are that this should continue. I think the general view is that you're creating a community with a balanced mix, the right mix of jobs, housing, different kinds of tenures, different demographics to create a healthy communities. So in terms of hard numbers, the aim is to provide 20,000 new homes. That will bring in 45,000 additional residents, and along with that, the aim is to provide 23,000 new jobs. So the strategic economic framework allows us to sort of set a target, and a timeline, a trajectory for employment creation. The study, which was prepared by consultants, has looked at Harlow and the surrounding area. It's identified 7 key employment sectors, things like health, life sciences, construction, education, and then it's taken 6 key themes, things like attracting inward investment, skills building, and those they think will enable Harlow and Gilston Garden Town to develop the employment sector and scale them up to hit the 23,000 jobs aim by 2045. So each theme has actions associated with it, short, medium and long-term actions. But it's a challenging target. So currently Harlow has a relatively low job density, and the strategic economic framework target is 50% increase in the current rate of employment growth. So there is a recognition that the economic framework has got to be flexible going forward. Can't guarantee it'll work, but that's the aim. So how do we get there? So there'll be an annual review of targets and trajectories with a 5-year major review and refresh, and a dashboard of KPIs that can be monitored by members of the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town Joint Committee. So the paper, this paper has already been presented to the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town Board, and it's been approved, and it's now come out to the member authorities for approval. And I would like to propose that we do approve it tonight. Could I have a seconder for that? Vicky, thank you very much. Any thoughts, comments, questions? John, straight in.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the data set that's been used for this, in that it's pre-COVID data sets. So we've all know that there's a large increase in home working, and just picking up on your phrase of enhanced sustainability. So the more home working we have, the fewer transport requirements there are. So we don't have to worry about the travel aspect of things as much, or at least it can have an impact on it. So I just want to make sure that as the pre-COVID data, the post-COVID data becomes available, and we see how home working is enhanced, can we think in our economic development plan of how we can encourage more and more home working? Because the journey you don't have to make is by far the most sustainable one. The economic development plan, I believe, is currently under review. So let's think about that really strongly in terms of having sustainable environments. And is there an opportunity for the Strategic Economic Forum paper here to be updated as that data becomes available? This, I believe, is just a snapshot in time, but just let's go in with eyes open wide that things will change and try and pull that change out.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. As you say, it's a snapshot. So we recognise that things obviously moved on since it was first prepared, and that's why it's got to be updated. And yeah, home working is absolutely key to a key part of creating a sustainable community. So it's very important. I don't know if Kevin, do you want to add any more?
Thank you again. Yes, yeah, absolutely on the data, and we have used that. This study did use pre-COVID data because obviously some of these changes are long term. They're yet to settle into the sort of longer term pattern. So pre-COVID, even though we recognise its shortcomings, is the best sort of data that we can use to start with. But as Councillor Chris was saying there, obviously we will continue to review this on a regular basis. So this is a set of actions that the partners can take, and we're reviewing the outcomes that we achieve from it on a regular basis. The point about home working and obviously is well made, and yes, we understand the beneficial impact of that in relation to sustainability and travel. So yes, that's all woven in. This if you like, is the person that homeworks still has to have a job in the first place. I suppose this is about creating those opportunities in the first place. So that's beneficial for the Garden Town. And then if that opportunity is a home worker, that has a double beneficial effect. Obviously, jobs and employment, economic growth, and obviously sustainable travel plans. So yeah, all of those will be folded into how the actions we take going forward.
Thank you.
There is the person who homeworks, but then there's the person who would like to work in a very localized office. I know the WeWork concept hasn't perhaps worked, but maybe that's for other reasons that hasn't worked. But let's think whenever we're building community infrastructure that it's for people who want to go and have a meeting, but they want it local. They don't want to have to traipse off into Harlow or wherever.
Yeah, those neighbourhoods.
Yeah,
with shops,
cafes
businesses
with
and
rentable rooms,
pubs
that sort
where
of
you
thing.
can work locally is really important.
Yeah.
No, I get that. Thank you. The comments, questions? Oh, Carl, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I thought this was a great report. I enjoyed reading lots of good numbers in here. And it's obviously great that we're looking at this. But I kind of got the feeling that there were some really difficult challenges there about employment land and actually creating that employment. Yeah, there's comments in section 6 on page 251 about but conflict between the current state of the commercial market, which is not enabling new employment development at scale due to weak viability. And I kind of, although it's great that we've obviously set targets and we've got to do something, but I kind of have these red flags that, are we doing something here that's going to actually be almost impossible to achieve? Because it seems that there's no, is there a plan B? What happens if there is no land available, if the developers don't want to create this employment space? And what happens then? We end up with a town that becomes not sustainable because people then possibly have to travel to jobs in Cambridge or London. And I kind of feel that, it's great that we're looking at it, but it feels though, it's a bit late in the process. We should have thought about this right at the very start.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I know that there's a lot of risk associated with I think the UK Health Security Agency is one of those key employers that has been expected to go into Harlow. I don't think we know yet whether it's there. That's still one of those challenges. Was it thought about at the beginning? I imagine it probably was. But Kevin, do you want to say anything about that before my time?
Yes, yeah, we have undertaken, so wind back to the East Herts District Plan, obviously, and we were working, we weren't in as close a partnership then with our partners at Harlow and Epping Forest, but we undertook a economic analysis of the wider area. So we actually included both those partners and Uttlesford, for example. So we were looking across a much wider area to seek to identify land requirements and actions we can take. There are challenges, absolutely. There are challenges. We know that there are some potential more easy wins, and when I say none of these are easy, but for example, the commitment around the delivery of the new hospital in Harlow, that's obviously a very significant input into the local economy. Nothing's guaranteed. We do recognise that, but we'll have to continue to this, if you like, it sets out a range of options, and more interventionist options are in there, such as securing land might be required for delivery of employment. That is an option that the partnership can look to explore further if it feels the market isn't delivering. So, it's carry on assessing the risks and take actions as appropriate, I think, is the basis of this report and any review of it in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Right, Eric.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, this is not unconnected to the earlier discussion on the IDP. I think if you take Hertfordshire as a whole, there's a lot of inward investment going on, lots of opportunities. And I see the West Essex, Harlow and West Essex being very much part of that economic area. I think the problem for me is that if you just look at Harlow at the moment, it's bursting at the seams in terms of the ability to move around. Because of the way that industries and commerce is clustered. We know there was a reference to what's changed since COVID, and yes, there are more people working from home, maybe part-time working from home, but there are more commercial vehicles around because more and more people get things delivered. So there will be more of that type of employment. So it just goes back to the phasing of delivery of infrastructure, because if that isn't done correctly, then it's really going to blight Harlow, which I think is already blighted at the moment. So a lot of attention needs to be paid to that to enable this economic growth to take place. So the potential is great, but actually it's got to be done in the right way. Thank you, Chairman.
No, thanks, Eric. Anything to add? Probably not, maybe not. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yvonne.
Just another housing related thing for economic growth. That is, I don't know whether the report has anything about key worker housing, but for a prosperous area, that we do have to allow for services and education and transport, and that would seem to go hand in hand with the objectives.
I don't know. Has it got housing, key worker housing in it?
It's not its focus. Acknowledge the point. Absolutely well made. It's not its focus because it is very much about the delivery of the economic growth. Do understand, of course, that the right type, mix and delivery timescale of housing is required to support economic growth. So, you know, we get the two sort of differences of the spectrum here, whereas we heard before about, well, we might have lots of housing growth and no jobs and everybody will travel elsewhere, or we might have lots of jobs but not the right housing, and therefore we're sucking in people from elsewhere because they can't afford to live locally or not the right housing. So we have to balance off like the aspirations in the economic framework we've got here with our housing delivery aspirations, and of course we deal with back to the planning authorities, East Herts and our two partners. The planning authorities obviously to deliver the right mix of housing. That's the assessment that we undertake through district plan, and obviously then the delivery of sites. So housing not a key element of this, but we acknowledge the linkage and the importance of those links.
No. Okay. Graham's yawning. It's time to move on. So can I have a show of hands to indicate whether you're, so the recommendations A and B for this item are on page 218 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands to indicate whether we are in favour or against? In favour first. Thank you very much. And any against? Or abstentions? No. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the Thriving Together 23 to 27 new health and wellbeing plan for East Herts on page 292 to 354. And I'll hand over to Councillor Sarah Hopewell.
Thank you for that. So yes, this piece of work began a while ago, and then some work has already started on it under the previous administration. So that was a really good base to then build on. We did a survey over the autumn. So the officers put together a kind of a draft of what it could look like, and there was a survey that went out to the public. Got some really great feedback from that. I think it's kind of hard to say how many respondents there were, because there were some that didn't completely sort of partly responded, but it was a good number of responses. And from that, we went back and made quite a few changes. So there's examples in the appendices of the sorts of responses that people made and changes that we were able to make off the back of that. And then we had a focus group just before Christmas to go through the updated version and got some really useful feedback from residents at that as well. So the aim of this is, so we've tried to make it fairly user-friendly. I know people are, the general public may not wish to read weighty reports, so hopefully it's a fairly accessible a reference group or working group around developing an action plan, and then I guess kind of making sure that it is actually delivered as well. And we do want to have ongoing resident engagement as well. The whole premise, I guess, is that it's jointly owned by residents and by the council. So the more resident engagement, the better, really. I mean, it's a very broad topic, and wellbeing covers a lot of different areas. So we're hoping, I guess, going forward that we can use a range of expertise amongst the councillors that we have to really get something positive delivered. And we've already had people getting in touch about ways to get involved. So yeah, hopefully the executive will agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So you're proposing to put the paper? Okay. Can I have a seconder, please? Joe, really quick. Questions, comments? Joe.
Thank you, Leader. If I may, just for a minute. A couple of things here. One, I know that I know well-being, the whole well-being picture is more than just exercise. There are lots of dimensions to that. And I also know as a council, due to financial reasons, we've had to close a swimming pool recently. So there's been some disappointment there. But that's not going to stop me saying, or just wanting to highlight how important I believe the exercise and the physical activity aspect of this plan is. I think we're suffering a little bit of a crisis in exercise in this country, and it's purely anecdotal. probably like nobody else in this room, I'm an avid reader of the cycling press. It seems every other week another huge business in this country is going bust. We've had Chain Reaction, Wiggle, number of bike manufacturers that most people would never have heard of are in administration, going into liquidation. Very anecdotally, since the pandemic, I think the crisis has got really bad. So just again, one silly example, the Hampton Court Half Marathon used to be a huge event. I've taken part a few times, not this year, but you used to have to be logged in on the day tickets came on sale to get a spot. I got an email a couple of days ago offering me a discount. It's taking place in 2 weeks. You know, I think there is a bit of a crisis there. Obesity costs the NHS, again, a report that was in the paper. Don't know how the research was conducted, but it says it's cost the NHS £6.5 billion a year. It's a huge amount. I just wanted to sort of highlight the crisis I'm seeing this, and just hope that this document, it's broadly for the council to act as an enabler, you know, to facilitate groups, to get people doing things on a wide scope of different wellbeing activities. Before I was elected here into this council, I organised various sporting events. I won't say the name of the authorities and I won't say the names of the locations, but one was a what they call a cycle sportive, like a charity cycle stroke race type thing, and also a fun run. And as the organiser, when I contacted 2 local authorities to ask for their advice about implementing it, the default position was don't do it. It was kickback, it was objections, it was highlighting risk. They were advisory positions, so I went ahead with both of them. The cycle race took part for about 8 years. We had over 1,000 people take part, probably more than that, and we raised thousands of pounds for the Isabel Hospice. You know, so we brought loads of people together, communities from all over London, different parts of the country used to come down, and then some of us would join on the back of that, would get to know us, and we'd go cycling all over Europe. So, you know, some really good stuff happened. And I suppose the point being that hopefully going forward, the default position will be yes. You know, how can we as a local authority make that work? Not, no, we shouldn't do that. And also just thank Sarah as well, because she did give me some time to sit down and talk with her, and knows this is a subject close to my heart. Thank you very much for doing that as well.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I mean, a really good point. You know, thanks to the officers as well, because I think we all appreciate it's been a big job putting it all together and doing the consultation. So yeah, it's really important. Alex.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to say I'm pleased that when we made the decisions about where we would have to make cuts, that we agreed so far to protect the money that we give to organisations like Citizens Advice Bureau and the Community Alliance and the community grants, because all of those play a really important part in helping to, when it comes to the action plan and helping to deliver the action plan. So I'm pleased we're being able to go down that route. And these are the sorts of these organisations support the sort of people who are really suffering from the cost of living crisis, the very sharp end of the cost of living crisis, and who really will be a focus of this strategy. Thank you.
No, thanks. Yeah, it's true. Wellbeing's critical, and those agencies do great work in supporting, don't they? Any other comments? Eric.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I'm pleased to see the continuation of this work. So well done for that. And Joe's absolutely right. There are many aspects to this. Well-being, there was something that came out a few years ago that was talking about the 5 ways to well-being. So it's more than just being physically active. That's really important too. It's about being engaged. It's about not being isolated. So there were a number of things that we were doing over the years. One of the really good things, I think maybe just before Joe came into the council, was the Everyone Active programme. And that was where there was some seed funding to enable community halls all around the district to then get people who were previously inactive to then take part in things. Because there are lots of people who would probably come along to a major sporting event, but actually they want to play soft mat bowls or something, because that's really what they're capable of doing. And it's the interaction with other people as well. It's looking after older people and culture. And I think the cultural strategy still exists. And we've got funding from the Shared Prosperity Fund. All of those things will actually work towards people thriving and together. So yes, all of us have a role to play in that. Thank you, Chairman.
No, thanks. That's all really good points. Graham.
Thank you. I'm pleased that Eric's pleased, so that's a good whatever. But no, Jo's picked up some really good points there. In Bishop Salford, we've got a really vibrant cycling community, encouraging not only people to sort of learn how to ride bicycles, but encouraging women to train women on cycling, go out together, etc., etc. There's big things going to sort of happen in the not too distant future. But one of the challenges is on health and well-being. It's not just about exercise. It's about the type of food that we eat. There's lots of processed food. And I think one of the biggest challenges we all face, irrespective of political party, is the manufacturers of the food. How can we actually influence what they put in? I'm a diabetic and I love donuts, but you walk past these, you can't have it, you know, and it's more, what can I eat? What am I allowed to eat rather than what's on display? And I find it very difficult to find food that doesn't sort of boost my sugar levels, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering how we can sort of influence food manufacturers to change what they do. But it's all about taste at the end of the day. High salt, high fat, high sugar, etc. And it's, I don't know what the answer is.
No, that's a really good point. I think one of the things that you're trying to do, Vicky, and I think with part of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, is to encourage markets, local markets with local food. And if you're getting fresh produce locally, easily accessible, I think that's a really important factor for encouraging healthy diet. But yeah, it's really difficult. Any other comments? No? Okay. All right. So the recommendations A to C for this item are on page 292 to 293 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands to indicate those in favour or against? In favour, please. Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, we move on to item 10. Revised East Herts Council's safeguarding policy and procedure, which is pages 355 to 401 of the agenda pack. And it's over to Councillor Miney Goldspeak.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to present this updated and revised safeguarding policy. I must begin by thanking the officers very much for all their hard work on this report. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Councillor Boylan, who was the previous executive member for neighbourhoods. I'd like to thank him very much for all his work on the policy in the past and for continuing his assistance this year. Thank you very much. Thank you. This policy was last reviewed in 2020, and this amended version now, revised and amended, incorporates several changes which are detailed in section 2.11 of my report. I will read them out later if you wish. Safeguarding is a very important statutory duty for the whole council. In fact, we all share the responsibility for protecting our residents from harm and abuse. We need to be especially aware of our duty of care towards children and vulnerable adults. This policy has been seen by the independent chair of the Hertfordshire Safeguarding Board, Elizabeth Hanlon, and she was very complimentary in her assessment of it. We might now have the impression that abuse does not happen in East Herts, but that would be a false impression. Abuse can and does happen in our district. In fact, there have been 21 cases reported here in the last 3 quarters, in fact, since March 2023. Yes, 21 cases, and many of them have been related to mental health issues. So it is really important that we all know what to do whenever we suspect that abuse might be happening. This new safeguarding policy has a new section right at the beginning, a new overview and safeguarding policy right at the beginning of the document. And it gives brilliant and clear guidelines so we can all have confidence to know what to do. You just have to open it and look, and it is there right at the beginning, overview of a safeguarding policy. So nobody need be frightened that they don't know what to do. Look at this and it gives very clear guidelines. In summary, I believe that this revised safeguarding policy is an excellent policy. I commend it to everyone, and I do hope that you will recommend it to the full council for adoption. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Marnie. So you're proposing it?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Okay, and can I have a seconder, please? Alex, thank you very much. Any comments, questions, thoughts? Yep, Joe.
Just a little one again, if that's okay, Leader. So I think safeguarding is one of those things that happens, you know, away from the public eye, isn't it? Quite often due to the confidential nature of what's happening. I've had the unfortunate situation to have just a very small number of these in the last 5 years, but really just to commend Jonathan's team that when they have happened, the response rate is lightning quick. You know, it's within minutes. I know we have the member system to report things. You can report something to Jonathan or to his colleagues, and you will get a phone call back almost immediately, and the action will be taken likewise. So it's one of the things I think that we do, amongst many things, really, really well, but it's just worth highlighting. It might not be something that wider members see if they've not come across it, but it's a function that we run really, really well.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, that's a really important thing to highlight. And yeah, and I mean, it's not something we want to celebrate, but I think we can celebrate it in the way that we clearly are able to respond quickly, and that's important. So thank you. Thanks very much. It's a really important policy. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay, so should we have a show of hands to indicate whether we're in favour or against? Those in favour, please. Thank you. Any against? No, or abstentions? No. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Marnie. Item 11 on the agenda now, East Herts Air Quality Action Plan, which is on pages 402 to 587 of the agenda pack. And for this, it's over to Councillor Tim Hoskin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening. So this summary, this report presents to the executive members the final draft version, which sounds a bit tortuous, but the final draft version of the Air Quality Action Plan. It's draft in that it has to be submitted, and one of the recommendations is that we have permission following this meeting to submit it to DEFRA, who then approve the action plan. So this has been compiled following public consultation, review by members, and it's been through the overview and scrutiny committee. So as I guess everybody's aware, we've got 3 AQMAs, Bishop Stortford, Hertford and Sawbridgeworth. And whilst none of those breach the 200 micrograms per meter cubed of NO2, the hourly mean average, we did breach in all 3 areas, or examples in all 3 areas, the 40 micrograms per meter cubed annual mean average. So there is work to do, and that's what the action plan sets out to do. Because we've got declared AQMAs, we are required under the national legislation to produce an action plan, and this is the action plan to tackle the air pollution. So whilst there are many sources of pollution affecting the air quality in East Herts, pollution from vehicles is the main contributing factor with regards to our 3 AQMAs, and with diesel cars being the main source of pollution. And where possible, we've focused our action plan on reducing this source of pollution. The action plan is designed to be active, and it's an evolving document throughout the next 5 years. So part of the recommendation is that we're allowed to flex and introduce new ideas as and when we need to do, as perhaps the technology moves on or the demand moves. We consulted publicly between 31st of October and the 13th of December. Had a good response in that the public response, which includes councillors, business owners and town council, we've got 189 respondees, which was, sorry, 182 out of the 189, so we had 7 statutory ones, which is a good response rate, I think, in that it's clearly front and centre of lots of people's thoughts. And there are expectations that air quality needs to improve, which we're pushing at the right place. So we went to the overview and scrutiny on the 16th of January this year, and we've incorporated comments as appropriate, and you can see those within Appendix C of the report. We also incorporated the comments as appropriate from the public, and they appear in Appendix B. So I'd like to propose this paper and its recommendations.
Thank you very much, Tim. Could I have someone second it, please? Would like to second it. Oh, okay, Vicky, thank you very much. Open to comments or questions. Graham.
I think it's good to see that over a long period of time we've actually got here and that we've got the end result. A lot of time and effort's gone into it by officers over both administrations, liaising with county council and various agencies. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we've got, irrespective of what's contained within the body of the AQMA, is actual behaviour change and how we introduce that behaviour change into individuals' sort of daily routine, etc. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to actually make the change. Do they start the journey 10 minutes, 30 minutes later? Do they start it earlier? Is there a different route that people can actually go? We don't know, but yeah, no, it's good to see that we've actually got there. You've actually got there, the end, and yeah, let's hope it bears fruit at the end of the day.
Well, perhaps I can come back on Graham's point that we have now installed real-time air monitors in all 3 of our AQMAs. And in fact, the officers went for training today, so they are black belts on any data on air quality. So we're now looking at how we can publish that, and our ambition is to get that going through the East Herts website rather than through a partner site, which is where it currently sits for the Hertford real-time air quality. And I fancy a big button on the front sheet where we can press, and you will see the air quality pop up. And Graham mentions behavioural change, and it's a fabulous phrase, but behind it is masses and masses of stuff we probably don't know how to pull the levers on. But one thing we are trying to do within the time of this air quality action plan is to shift the paradigm, if we can, from it being one where we retrospectively look back and see what our actions had. Did they have any impact on the air quality action plan? But this can be 18 months, 2 years after the event, to one where we are making decisions based on the data and changing our behaviours proactively. So, you know, if perhaps we can get to this point, the real-time air quality says at Hockrell Junction, for example, if you're travelling now, the air quality in a Hockrell Junction is very poor, and it'll give a number, and we'll understand what that number is. And then some options. If you can delay your trip, go at 11 o'clock. The air will have cleared, you know, and you've not contributed to it. If you have to travel, can you use sustainable means? Can you use active travel? If you have to travel, can you share a car? If you have to travel, is there a way of perhaps rerouting yourself so that you can still go on that journey, but actually do the Hockrell bit at the end of it? So those are the behavioural change which we're going to try and do in real time, rather than retrospectively wonder why nothing we've done's had any impact.
Yeah, and you mentioned 18 months, 2 years for things to happen. I mean, if we go back to July 2022, when the put an application in to get funding, And it wasn't for their monitors and numerous other things. It wasn't until February 23 that we actually got acknowledgement that we got the grant. And from February 23 to now to sort of get the air monitors, get them installed, and as you say, go live however we go live. So it's not a thing that happens overnight. It does take a period of time, and it's understanding how we can maximize or minimize the length of time that actually takes to do all this.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just time; it's partnership working as well. Clearly, you know, we have to be working very closely with county, with highways, with other agencies, and so that's a sort of key. And I think, and it's good to see that there is buy-in at all levels.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
really important.
Ward councillors can play a huge role in this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, Yvonne.
Just a little thing. I mean, in the proposed actions, one of them is acknowledging the LC WIP, the local cycling and walking strategy, and I think we anticipate that that will lead to some physical changes. So I think about Hockrell Junction. Ultimately, there'll be physical changes there to help people cross the roads and to make walking much more pleasant and safe, and that will impact on traffic movement and it will impact on this. So I think anticipating those physical changes, there's an element of design involved here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the LC WIP, whilst it's not the night coming over the hill, I think it will be part of the solution. And we're going to have to. East Hart's had a remarkably positive and numerous, in terms of the numbers who responded. We had a marvellous response to the LC WIP. There's a further round of engagement coming out before the public consultation. So I'd encourage everybody to keep an eye out for that. It'd be sort of mid-March, April time.
It's April time, mid-April onwards.
Mid-April onwards. Okay, thanks, Brian.
Right. Thank you. Any other final questions or comments? No. Okay. Right. So the recommendations are A to E. The 5 of them for this are on page 402 of the agenda pack, and we'll take those en bloc. Can we have a show of hands to indicate if you're in favour or against? In favour, please. Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? Thank you. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 12, Stansted Abbott's car park charges, pages 588 to 598 on the agenda pack. Back to Tim.
Thank you, Ben. So the proposal within your pack this evening is to reintroduce car parking charges in Stansted Abbott's car park. So a little bit of background to this. French and Jups, a large commercial employer within Stansted Abbott's, approached East Harts in 2014 and proposed to what offered to pay £7,500 annually to cover the pay and display income from the village car park. East Harts, it wouldn't surprise you, agreed to that. But the French and Jups corporate funding was withdrawn in July 2022. And this has led to East Harts undertaking a review to ensure that the operation of the car park continues to be funded appropriately. So the council has a duty to deliver a reasonable return for taxpayers in the context of the non-statutory off-street car park service. Car park charging is intended to maintain a balance between the provided funding to deliver the service, encouraging modal change, supporting the vitality and economy of the village, and supporting residents, visitors and local businesses alike. East Harts operates all its car parks on a chargeable basis to ensure the available spaces are effectively regulated in respect of demand and turnover. And the rationale for introducing charges or reintroducing charges here is associated with the principle that the user contributes towards the cost of service provision in the absence of the commercial sponsorship, and that the council or general taxpayers do not disproportionately fund such costs. Car park charges will help ensure optimal use of the available car parking spaces and, can support a modal shift away from private vehicle use. A well-managed car park will support the village by effectively regulating turnover and providing parking options for a variety of customers. So the proposal this evening in front of you is that we reintroduce car parking charges within East Herts following the public consultation which took place in the summer last year. So I recommend the recommendations I propose within this paper.
Thanks, Tim. Can I have a seconder, please? Oh, thank you, Marnie. So comments, questions, thoughts? Graham.
Being familiar with the car park, I think what you've got to be aware of is the unintended consequences. I believe the car park was heavily used. Is the migration of cars from the car park for those that might have to pay for it to parking in the side streets, and there was some sort of challenges there a couple of years back about vehicles parking not too far from the railway station car park.
It's a challenge. Yeah. Yeah. Eric.
Yeah, just want to say it is a challenge. The parish council clearly don't like, because I'm the local county member, and the challenge is always around location where there's a railway station. Of course, I've already, including people within this council chamber, who are concerned around parking in certain streets, and I don't want to go down the route of installing double yellow lines. You know the situation as a county councillor too, just to discourage people, when it ultimately just moves the problem on. So whereas I understand why this decision is being made, because it's no longer being funded by a third party, it will have consequences and people will be coming to me for a solution, and I don't know what that solution will be. Thank you, Chairman.
No, I think that's a really good point, and it's something I think we all feel, and we see across the district, don't we? Really, in anywhere where there are places like train stations. Yeah. Oh, Peter, sorry.
Somebody else has got.
Oh, sorry.
Somebody's still got their microphone.
It's not going off.
Does that one not work? Oh.
Does that work?
Yeah, sorry, Peter.
Okay, so if I just may make a few comments on behalf of residents as one of the local ward members for Stansted Abbots. Stansted Abbots is a Group 1 village in East Herts district plan, and I believe is the only village in East Herts to have a car park that is managed by East Herts Council. All others lie within our 5 towns, where population, traffic and footfall is much higher than in the village of Stansted Abbots. We could argue that over the last 10 years, residents and visitors have enjoyed short-term parking free of charge, funded by a commercial organisation. Since this funding has been withdrawn, this council needs to find an alternative way to raise much needed funds. Nobody could argue with that point. However, this council appears to have taken chosen the easy route and plan to introduce parking fees that will directly impact village residents and their visitors who rely on using a car park for visiting shops and services in the high street in particular. The report talks about the need for modal shift. We need to remember this is a village and not a town, and many residents aren't able to access shops and other services without a car, due to lack of regular public transport networks serving our villages. My first question is, have alternative sources of funding been explored for this fairly unusual situation in one of our villages, rather than introducing car parking fees? Moving on from that, the report states that East Herts operates all of its car parks on a chargeable basis, but makes no comparison with the other car parks. However, there are some significant disparities which I believe should be taken into account before deciding to introduce parking charges at the proposed tariff for this Group 1 village, especially when compared to car parking charges in place in our towns. When comparing current tariffs with our two smallest towns, there are some significant differences in the parking charges, with Stansted Abbots being disadvantaged in many situations. Buntingford and Sawbridgeworth car parks are both free to park all day on Saturday and Sundays, compared with a £1.50 charge being proposed for Stansted Abbots. Buntingford car park only charges on weekdays from 9 AM to 3 PM, with the first 90 minutes free of charge, compared to 7:30 AM to 6:30 PM, with only 30 minutes of free parking at Stansted Abbots. To park on weekdays in either of the town car parks for 3 hours costs £1.40, compared with £2.10 at Stansted Abbots. To park at Buntingford all day it costs £2.90 compared to £5 at Stansted Abbots. My second question is, why is this proposal to charge more to park in one of our villages than it is to park in at least two of our towns? Residents of Stansted Abbots are surely not being treated reasonably and equitably. I would ask the executive member to explain to residents the reasons for this, and I would also ask the executive member to reconsider the proposed tariffs to ensure that they are more favourable than parking in any of our towns. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. This is going to disappoint because the parking review, which we will be undertaking during the summer, will look at removing anomalies across East Harts car parks so that there is a fairness across the whole piece, including Buntingford and Sawbridgeworth and every other car park that's going. So there will be parity of some stage, dependent on the results of a public consultation. But some of the disparity is noted now, and I guess other people will see that as well, and wonder why it is that shopping in Ware or shopping in Hertford or Bishop Stortford is different experience when you're paying for car parking than say Buntingford and Sawbridgeworth. So I think there will be an opportunity to redress that imbalance during the summer, during the public consultation. You asked a question about alternative funding. I'm not sure what you had in mind, if there was anything. There isn't any alternative funding within East Harts for car parking other than that we've got in other models.
If I may just come back there. So in terms of alternative funding, I wasn't suggesting that we look at funding from within East Harts, but actually, is there alternative commercial funding that could be available? Have discussions taken place with Stansted Abbots Parish Council about whether there is something that they can do in terms of funding from their precept? And not unlike some of the conversations that we've had with parish and town councils in the past, where we have come to an agreement to pass ownership over to parish and town councils. So those are just three things that just came to mind as you asked that question. In terms of parity and the parking review, I was hoping that you were going to bring that up, but it still seems a bit strange to start charging a village, the only village, a higher rate than what our current towns are. So why not address the disparity in all of those tariffs at the time that you're doing that later on in the summer, but actually introduce those parking tariffs at least the same level of Buntingford and Sawbridgeworth and no more?
But I think it's probably worth just reminding ourselves that Stansted Abbott's car park has always been charged for. There has been a grace period where, fortunately, a commercial provider stepped in and offered free car parking, unique, I guess, to Stansted Abbott. So this isn't something that we're trying to impose from a standing start. This has always been the case, that parking charges applied to Stansted Abbott, as you know. I mean, I would have been very welcoming to the parish council commenting within the consultation if they were willing to cover some of the cost in their precepts, but nothing of that was forthcoming in the comments that have been made within the consultation. That might have been helpful at that stage, but wasn't forthcoming at that stage, at this stage that we find ourselves in. So it's odd to come up with that now when we've had the full 6-week consultation period, when that was an opportunity missed.
Please don't take, this is not a suggestion from the Stansted Parish Council. It's literally off the top of my head.
Okay. I take that. Right. I'll get you in bother, you see, unwittingly. So I think, and as Graham will know, parking is a vexed question across East Hearts. It's something which we will try to get right, and we will try to use whatever we can to make things fair. But I think there's also an opportunity to be able to bring about some change as well throughout our attitude to popping to the shops and driving, as well as taking those opportunities to walk. I'd revert, I think, to where I got to in some of the introduction, was that a well-managed car park can actually help commercially, so that we haven't got transport rail users hogging the car park spaces all day. If they do, then they'll have to pay for that privilege. We've actually got a well-managed car park that has a high turnover, and hopefully EV charges in the not too distant future as well, to help those people who transit to electric EVs. So it's, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. I don't know who was first, Bob?
It's okay. An interesting conversation across the chamber. I don't mean to sound kindly, Tim, but my sense of your answer to Peter is that you had not considered alternative funding possibilities for this car park, and I think we would like to ask you to confirm that you will now do that, please. Thank you.
Well, I guess, Bob, I'd throw that back at yourself, because this started in 2022.
If you don't mind me saying, Tim, you're the administration. It's for
Well,
you to deal
indeed.
with it. It's for you to deal with it. You've got
Indeed.
paper forward.
Indeed. So the opportunity.
So is the answer to my question yes or no?
Well, I'll
will
give
you
my
not
answer
look
if I
at
could, Bob,
alternative
please.
funding mechanisms?
I'll give my answer if I could then, Bob, please. So the opportunity to review that was on your plate when you were the administration. That didn't happen. So presumably you had the same thought process I did, that wasn't a viable alternative, and that we revert to standard charging throughout the car park.
I just maintain my question. Will you or will you not look at alternative funding mechanisms for this car park?
No, at this stage, no.
So your answer is no.
I've just said no.
Okay, fine.
I just wanted to pick up the points that Peter was saying. Actually, the towns are not all alike, and we're going out to consultation as a council. And I'm going to say something ironic. You know, the council is saying that they're the listening council. You really do need to listen to what people are saying and look at the evidence, because Sawbridgeworth Town Centre is not like Bishop Stortford. People go in for different reasons. The transaction values can be completely different. And even if you were, for example, to say, we'd like a fast turnover of parking spaces so people go in for the small things and deter longer people, the people who will be penalised will be the owners of the local businesses. So it's really a complex situation. And for that reason, during the last review, Sawbridgeworth actually had had 2 increases rather than the RPI increase, to take into account that actually it's really valuable to keep the weekend parking slots free. And the other thing you need to take into account is the timing, because there are traffic regulation orders around parking restrictions, and people will just park on the streets, just like in Stansted Abbots. Once the parking restrictions are off on Sunday or in the evenings, they'll park in the streets. So there won't be any revenue coming from those. So you really do need to listen to what people say during those consultations. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I do acknowledge that, and that's the purpose of making the consultation public, so we can hear those comments. Thank you for those.
Okay, sure. What I've got to say probably is not going to be quite as popular as what Peter might have said with some individuals. But when I could see this coming forward, I kind of asked myself a question. Could I sit in the Oak? Could I sit in the Jolly Fisherman? Or could I sit in the Red Lion and defend my position? And I've come to the conclusion that yes, I could with local residents. I think I'm the only person in the room that lives in Stansted Abbots, would be my guess. On the point of looking for alternatives, perhaps that's also the job of a ward councillor, no? We've not had a conversation, we've not instigated a conversation, and just like an awful lot of these things, and everyone's guilty of this in the chamber, the ideas come forward, but we all know it's far too late to make a difference. And perhaps we would have had this conversation about parity and being delayed, and there being parity and decisions being made later. Perhaps the outcome might have been different. I don't know. But I think as ward councillors, we've got just as much responsibility to do that, and none of those conversations have come to me from anyone. And I do agree with what Tim is saying. This has been a situation that's been known about for a long while. I know there are some people in the village taking great interest in how I'm going to vote on this particular piece. But I think the questions I've asked myself is we've got to look at this in the bigger picture of the medium-term financial plan and where this council is heading. And therefore, it would not be right of me to try and to ask the residents of Bishop Stortford, Sawbridgeworth, Buntingford, villages, wherever, to subsidise my village. I don't think that would be correct of me in the position I've got to do that. And that is the main driver of why I've decided to turn up and vote tonight. I could have not turned up, but I decided to turn up and vote because I think it is the only real option that we've got, and certainly no other options have brought to me before. And I have gone to some of the groups in the village who've complained and said, I am all ears. If you've got a different alternative, or you can come up with something that works financially and is correct, I'll put down an amendment to this. Nothing. So in the absence of those, I have to look at the bigger picture as an executive member and not just the place where I live. And that's why I'm going to be voting for this tonight.
Thanks. Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. Possibly a bit of a tangent here, but I personally can't drive. I haven't driven for about 20 years. And I'm looking at these prices and I'm thinking, as a non-driver, these still seem fairly reasonable. It cost me £2 each way to get the bus to where when I get there with the kids, so that's £4 return. Sometimes the bus drivers charge me for the kids, so that's £12 return. And that's like 5 kilometres down the road from where I live. For a short journey, and if I go out with the family, with my partner and my 2 kids, there is unless someone can't drive, there's still no incentive to not drive. Why would you not drive and just pay these prices compared to a whole family going on the bus, where it's going to be a lot more expensive? And transport statistics kind of regularly show 60% of our car journeys are under 5 miles, and a quarter of all car journeys are less than 1 mile. And there's no incentive for people to walk if it's free to park. I mean, I'm not saying that this isn't, I understand every town and every village is different, but we're enabling people to be inactive. And we've just had a discussion about how activity is important. And yet we're encouraging an environment where, when we all do it because it's convenient if you can drive like 5 minutes rather than walk 20 minutes, and we have busy lives. But we do have a role. We're saying we need people to be active. Maybe these little levers and pulleys can be enough. Like, I know my partner would probably walk 20 minutes rather than driving if he knows he's got to pay. I mean, I know not everyone is able-bodied and people have different circumstances, but again, I think it's just the wider context. And also, transport is the single biggest greenhouse gas emitter, and again, if we're, and 60% of that is from cars and vans. So, I mean, again, what signals are we sending if we're not looking at the little levers and pulleys that we have to reduce car journeys and to encourage activity or to incentivize other forms of transport other than driving? And I know it's always going to be unpopular to increase car parking charges, but I guess thinking about the other implications, and it's already one of the most heavily subsidized forms of transport. And if we're talking about a precept to help towards this, we're basically the lowest income households are the ones least likely to have a car. And we're sort of asking them to sort of part subsidize other people to be able to park when they're paying more for the bus. That just, I guess, just thinking of other angles on it, this doesn't seem entirely unreasonable to have this parking charge.
Thank you. Yes, good point. Joe.
I'm not sure if I did forget to say this or not, but I certainly wanted to plan, I know we call it the commercial enterprise, but I think we should name them, that French and Dukes have been the ones that are funding this. And I think it's only right that in public we acknowledge and thank them for doing that for the last 10 or so years. I think looking at the papers, a cost of around £75,000 or something. So yeah, I think there's, from the community, there's a big thank you for doing that.
Good point. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Peter.
I think probably the biggest point that I was trying to make appears to have sort of been missed. I don't think I ever was saying that I was suggesting that parking should continue to be free of charge. And if Sarah thinks that it's cheap to park at Stansted Abbots, then she ought to go to Sawbridgeworth or Buntingford. She can park there at the weekend free of charge. And that's the point I'm making. It's the disparity. Why are we looking at introducing charges in a village car park that are higher than in two of our towns? That is the real point I'm trying to make. It doesn't make sense. Yes, correct the inequity across all of our towns and the only one village car park that we have in a car parking review, because you're then doing it across the board. But introducing a disparity at this point in time just feels a little bit misguided.
Tim, do you want to come back on that? No? Okay.
Just one more comment, just to clarify mine. Why? I mean, we're both ward members, and you've been on the exec. You know how this works. You've done it for many years. You know that it's highly unlikely that when we get to this point, anything's going to change. Why didn't you pick up the phone before? That's a direct question to yourself. Why not?
I don't really want to get into a contest between two ward members. I don't think it's appropriate in this setting right now, because actually I could ask the same question of you too, but I'm not.
I've said that I've come here, having thought it, having given myself the test. Can I sit in the local pub with my mates, residents, and defend this? And I came to the position, yes, I could. So I didn't have the position that I didn't have the view that we should be doing something different. I had the position to agree with this. I'm asking that if, and you don't want to have this discussion here, fair enough, but what I'm asking is someone who would know how this works and know what the process is, leave it to here to have this conversation.
Greg, would you hand up? Sorry.
Yeah, it's on a slightly different point, but if I may. Tim quite rightly mentioned that it was in our administration when the stopped paying the car parking charges, but that was in actually July 2022, and the car parking section, there was officers gone on paternity leave. There wasn't sort of cover, and they were putting in TROs for various other price rises, etc. And very shortly afterwards, there was pulled up, etc. for election. So I don't think it's sort of fair to sort of go backwards and forwards in that one. The fact is that they've stopped paying, and an alternative source of funding has got to be found.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, Ben. I'm sorry, just to come back to this, I just find some of the remarks from the other side of the room just a shade odd. I mean, the fact of the matter is that you are the administration. It is for you guys to make the decisions. This is a democratic meeting. We are entitled to be here and make our comments. It could be that comments could have been made earlier, but we are just as entitled to make our comments now. And it falls to you as the administration to make the decision. And you clearly have a decision in mind, which you'll vote in a minute, and no doubt will vote in favour of. But that is where the buck stops. You are the administration. It falls to you to make the decision. And Ben's nodding. I mean, there's nothing, nothing remarkable in this. And then to take the consequences of the decision you're making. But you're not dealing with the points that Peter Boylan is making.
I think we have, and we've discussed them around a couple of times, in that these are the charges we're proposing. We're looking at removing anomalies through consultation over a summer period consultation, but in the meanwhile, this is the paper we're putting forward for approval.
Thank you. Okay. Joe? No? Okay. No? All right. Well, should we move on to the recommendations? So there are two recommendations for this on page 588 of the agenda pack. Can we have a show of hands for in favour or against? Can we have it in favour, please? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No. So that's carried. Thank you very much. Right. Where are we? Oh yes, here we are. Any other business? Any urgent business? Nope. Okay. No urgent items. So that concludes tonight's meeting at 9:02. Thank you very much.